our job is to get the economy and the government's books in good enough shape so regardless of what happens we can deal with it. And fortunately we're sufficiently on track after the global financial crisis and the recession to be able to handle this. It does underline our ongoing vulnerability.
Does it not at least give you pause to consider some sort of new revenue stream here? I mean, New Zealanders will look at this and go, hey, we've got no natural disaster fund anymore. We're willing to give a couple of bucks here and there to get things right again as soon as we can.
Look, I wouldn't rule out any of those considerations because, as you say, the fund we had 12 months ago, which was $6 billion, is all committed to the Christchurch earthquake. And clearly, if we were going to rebuild it, then you would have to get the revenue from somewhere. However, we're not launching into those issues today. I think it's important we focus on reassuring the Minister for Earthquake Recovery that the government can keep funding what it's committed to, and the people of Christchurch that we're focused on getting their claims dealt with. Everyone else in New Zealand can be reassured by the fact that the government has a guarantee in place with EQC, and their coverage continues to apply.
It's not sustainable, though, is it, to have zero coverage on these things? Just the crowd, you're going to have to bring up a fund.
Well, look, the whole episode of Christchurch has highlighted both the strengths and weaknesses of EQC, and when the time's right, we would examine whether that's the right framework to continue with.
So are you suggesting that, just in response to that question there, you wouldn't rule out a special levy or a special earthquake type levy or tax? In the past you have ruled it out. Are you saying it's now back on the table because of this situation?
Well, we're not looking at, as I've said, and I want to stress this, we're not looking at any changes in the immediate future. Clearly, though, as we break the back of the situation in Christchurch, we'll be moving to consider, along with the insurance industry and I think the general public, we'll be moving to consider whether the EQC framework worked well when it was severely tested. But we're not going to preempt those issues. All I'm saying today is we wouldn't rule out any consideration, any particular proposition in the future.
Isn't that a bit irresponsible when you're in such a really great country to leave that disaster fund at all?
Well, look, in the end, it's still the Crown, and what is responsible is to ensure that the Crown balance sheet is able to absorb the impact of any future event. Now, as it happens, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, independent of the earthquake, about the size and strength of the Crown balance sheet. So it's $220 billion worth of assets. We need to reinforce that strength by continuing to get on top of the debt the Crown has. I think New Zealanders can be reassured that if there is a natural disaster in the near future, the New Zealand government is in the position to meet the obligations that have been entered into through EQC. We can meet the cover.
So how can it be that you said that debt is outside the debt zone and pretty unsustainable at 16 billion as a deficit? It's now 18 billion. You still think it would be fine to fund a further disaster?
I wouldn't say it would be fine. The question, I mean, of course, we'd be much better off without this. We'd be making significant progress on the government's books without this kind of setback. The important thing here, though, is that New Zealanders who have cover from EQC can be reassured that if there is a natural disaster, they are covered. And if EQC don't have the money, then the government will produce it.
Can you give us a ballpark figure for the total cost of the earthquake at this point?
Well, the last estimate done by Treasury was about 15 billion, and we're asking them to go back and do another estimate. And they would want to take into account not just the changes in the EQC liability, but trying to get a handle on what's happening with private insurer liabilities as well. So it could be a while before there's another estimate. In the meantime, though, we've got the ability to meet the claims.
We're looking at roughly 20 billion if we had that 4 billion additional into
Well, as you know, EQC is just part of the liability. There's all the others. There's a court case that's going to have an impact on liabilities and where they fall. So yeah, in time there'll be another estimate.
Could this have the potential to change reinsurance contracts that were entered into following the earthquakes? I mean, could reinsurers say, well, hold on, the facts are all different now?
No, contracts are contracts. I think the point is that EQC has reinsurance contracts in place for the time ahead. Most of the private insurers will have a range of contracts in place. It's how those contracts are shaped up in the future that's important, and so letting the international reinsurers understand how much we're de-risking earthquake type events, not only in Canterbury but also throughout New Zealand in the years ahead, is going to be very, very important for being able to secure future contracts.
So with contracts that people are looking to secure now, so that those private insurers, I mean, how confident are you that those reinsurers will say, okay, let's go ahead with it, instead of saying, oh, well, hold on, you've just completely revised the damage the earthquake's done. How can we be sure that we want to effectively insure you?
Well, this is only one part of that reassessment, and they will be having discussions with private insurers who will be reporting to them exactly what sort of growth might be over the reserved amount that they have in any particular case. So I don't think you could take this as being an absolute determinant that reinsurance will desert. Every indication we've got is that reinsurance remains available. It's the price that becomes the most important thing. And the price, of course, is determined by the perceived risk going forward.
Do we understand fully yet that change in price? I think the last contract was, forgive me if I'm incorrect, something like 100% increase. Is that, you know, do we understand completely yet the way it's going to increase, or is that part of what I suppose will come in your meetings in Europe?
Well, no, we don't understand completely, but if you look at the way in which your retail insurance policy premium is calculated, somewhere between 15 and 20% of that policy is reinsurance costs. So a doubling of it doesn't mean a doubling of your premium. It has a price increase, obviously. But we just need to make sure that reinsurers understand that we are very, very keen to firstly quantify the damage here in New Zealand, to fix it, and to make sure that going forward the reasons for a lot of the failure of buildings, whether it's land or building failure itself, are understood and mitigated against going forward. And that's good for them. That means that they have a better understanding of their forward risk profile.
But just to emphasise the point, I mean, you still believe that there is reinsurance available?
Our advice is that reinsurance is available. It's price that may be an issue.
So what does this mean for those Christchurch homeowners who are hoping that you might rethink that housing verification package and be a bit more generous? Is that
Well, no, that's quite a separate decision. Look, I think a lot has been talked about that, but there are also large numbers who are considering the offers that have gone out, and so far we've had quite a number of acceptances. We hope to update a number on that next Monday. But in the end, a 2007 valuation is pretty fair, and there'd be a lot of people throughout the country who'd be quite happy if the government stepped up and paid them the 2007 valuation for properties that they've sold in the open market in the intervening years. Remember that these properties had no chance of ever gaining any further capital gain in the locations they were. So we think it is a very fair offer, and won't be revisiting that, apart from the two opportunities that exist and are outlined in the offer documents.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just have one more question for you? Do you get a sense of, historically, the situation we're in at the moment? I mean, is this as bad as it's been in decades?
Well, it's certainly the worst government deficit in a very long time. But I think if you're looking for comparisons, say going back to the mid-80s and early 90s, the economy itself is more resilient, and certainly New Zealanders are more resilient. So yes, on the absolute numbers, we're as vulnerable as we've ever been. but on our capacity to deal with it, I think we're in better shape than we have been for quite some time.